In 2017, a tiny Caribbean island was getting ready to host one of the biggest cricket tournaments in its history. The brand new stadium was shiny, modern, bigger than anything the country had ever built. The funny part, the workers putting the finishing touches on it mostly didn't speak the local language because the money, the concrete, the engineers, they all came from China, thousands of miles away, on the edge of the Sahara in Africa. Another brand new football stadium, Chinese built. In the Pacific, a whole sports village with athletics tracks and volleyball courts. Again, paid for, designed, and constructed by China. At the same time, back inside China. Kids in primary school were being marched out onto brand new football fields. 300 million people were told to take up winter sports, and Chinese billionaires were quietly buying football clubs in England, Italy, and Spain. To most people, these all look like random, separate stories. Some stadium construction here, some Olympic medals there, some ski resorts in the desert, a few esports tournaments and AI training tools, but they're not random. Together, they form a single long-term strategy. A 50-year plan to turn sports into a weapon of power, to rewrite China's image, influence other countries, and dominate the next era of global competition. From a poor country banned from the World Cup to a rising sports superpower trying to control everything from stadiums to esports to the Olympics, this is the story of China's secret plan to take over world sports. Chapter 1, From Humiliation to Obsession. To understand why China is so obsessed with sports today, you have to understand something deeper. China doesn't just see sports as games, it sees them as history therapy. In the 19th and early 20th century, China experienced what it still calls the century of humiliation. Opium wars, unequal treaties, invasions by Japan, tens of millions of deaths in war and famine. China was weak, carved up, and looked down upon. Fast forward to the Olympic era. For decades, China wasn't even allowed to properly participate in the Olympics because of the Taiwan issue. When it finally returned in the 1,980 seconds, the goal wasn't just to play, it was to prove something. We are not the sick man of Asia anymore. We are strong, we are back. Medals became a proxy war. Between 1,996 and 2020, China won the second most Olympic gold medals in the world, only behind the United States. They didn't do this by accident. They did it by design. The state built thousands of sports schools. Coaches were sent to scout. The tiniest, lightest kids for gymnastics and diving, the tallest for basketball and volleyball, the quickest reacting kids for table tennis, shooting, badminton. Children as young as 5 were pulled into full-time training regimes. Not for fun, but for medals. This is what China calls the whole nation system. The entire country's resources can be mobilized to achieve one goal. For decades, that goal was simple: win more Olympic medals than anyone else. But then something changed. China realized there is something even more powerful than Olympic medals: controlling the future of sports itself. Chapter 2, The Soccer Superpower Blueprint. If you want to rule the world of sports, you can't ignore the biggest religion on earth: football. Soccer isn't just a game. It's global culture. It's World Cups, Champions League nights, billion-dollar brands, and national identity. And for most of modern history, China has been terrible at it. The men's national team has qualified for the World Cup only once, in 2002. They lost all 3 matches. They scored 0 goals. For a country with 1.4 billion people, that's more than embarrassing. It's humiliating. That humiliation became fuel. Enter Xi Jinping. China's top leader is a self-confessed football fanatic. He's publicly said he wants China to 1. Qualify for a World Cup, 2. Host a World Cup, and 3. Win a World Cup, all before 2050. That is not a normal goal. That is a national mission. So China drew up something almost no other country has ever done: a 50-point national football plan. Chapter 3, Football Factories. Kids, pitches, and billionaires. The plan is wild. Step 1, start at the roots. Put football into the school system. Make it part of the curriculum. treat it almost like a subject. China announced plans to build around 70,000 new football pitches, set up 20,000 football academies, and by 2020, have tens of millions of registered youth players. The idea is simple. If Europe has a century-old football culture, we'll build one in 20 years. Kids in China now practice on school pitches instead of only cramming for exams. Join weekend training sessions run by government-backed coaches. Compete in huge youth tournaments designed to find the next national star. Step 2, import knowledge. Chinese billionaires started going on a shopping spree in Europe. English clubs like Aston Villa, Wolverhampton Wanderers, West Bromwich Albion, Italian and Spanish clubs, stakes in European teams big and small. Why? Owning a European club isn't just about making money from ticket sales. It's about learning how elite academies are run, understanding scouting networks, building relationships with agents, coaches, trainers, and gaining prestige. Look, China owns your favorite team. For a short period, Chinese clubs spent more on transfer fees in a single window than some of Europe's top leagues. They threw ridiculous money at aging stars. Brazilian strikers on insane salaries, European Champions League winners finishing their careers in the Chinese Super League. It looked like madness, but behind it was a test. Can we accelerate our football culture by buying time? Step 3, upgrade the domestic league. China's goal is to make the Chinese Super League first class in Asia by around 2030. That means better stadiums, better broadcast deals, stricter rules to promote local players, and eventually Chinese clubs that can compete with the best in Asia, then the world. On paper, it's the perfect blueprint. So why isn't China already a football superpower? Chapter 4, the flaws in the football machine. Because for all its spending and ambition, Chinese football has a human problem. The system that made China an Olympic medal factory is not the same system that makes a country love football. In China, school pressure is huge. Parents often value exam scores over sports. Free play, kids just kicking a ball in the street for fun, is rare in big cities. Instead of playing for hours with friends, many kids train like mini professionals. Strict drills, long training sessions, coaches yelling, results-based pressure. It produces disciplined players, but not necessarily creative, fearless, street-smart footballers. Then there's the bureaucracy. The football system is run by a web of officials, state-appointed administrators, and people who often care more about pleasing superiors than building a healthy football culture. In the last few years, nearly a dozen top football officials in China have been investigated for corruption. Former chiefs of the Chinese Football Association, a former FIFA council member, even senior Olympic sports bosses. Match-fixing scandals. Bribery, money disappearing. It's the same pattern that destroyed trust in other sectors. A powerful central system that can win medals, but can also hide mismanagement and graft. The result? Despite billions spent and bold dreams, China's men's national team is still struggling in Asia. The blueprint is there. The results? Not yet. And this is the first big twist in our story. China's plan to rule world sports doesn't rely on football alone. While the men's team keeps losing, China quietly opened other fronts. Chapter 5, turning the country into a ski resort. In 2015, Xi Jinping made another wild promise: to get 300 million Chinese people involved in ice and snow sports. Think about that number. 300 million skiers, snowboarders, skaters. That's almost the entire population of the United States. Why would a country where many regions have no natural snow suddenly go crazy for skiing? The answer: Beijing 2022. Hosting the Winter Olympics wasn't just about 2 weeks of TV coverage. It was about sparking a winter sports revolution, developing poor northern provinces, and seizing control of another part of global sports culture. China began building ski resorts in previously unknown towns, ice rinks in shopping malls, indoor snow domes in hot southern cities. By the mid-2022, the government reported around 3,000 winter sports venues, Over 300 million people who had tried some form of ice or snow sport, skiing, skating, ice hockey, curling. Old factories were turned into rinks. Desert areas had artificial slopes. Grandparents in cities were suddenly learning how to skate. But again, this wasn't just, let's all have some fun in the snow. It was money and power. China expects its ice and snow economy to reach around 1.5 trillion yuan, over $200 billion by 2030. Hotels, ski passes, equipment rentals, local tourism in cold provinces that used to be poor and forgotten. At events like the Asian Winter Games, Chinese athletes have started topping medal tables, boosted by new training centers, specialized academies, and heroes like freestyle skiers and snowboarders turned into national icons. And yet, this, again, is just one front. Chapter 6, Stadium Diplomacy, Building the World's Sports Arenas. Now we leave China's borders, because some of the most important pieces of this plan are not inside China at all. Since the 1,950 seconds, China has quietly built dozens and dozens of stadiums in other countries. By some counts, almost 150 stadiums in around 70 countries, over $5 billion in costs, spread across Africa, the Caribbean, the Pacific, Asia, and beyond. These stadiums host African Cup of Nations matches, Cricket World Cups, regional games, national leagues. On Inauguration Day, you'll often see the host country's president cutting a ribbon, and right next to him, the Chinese ambassador smiling for the cameras. To the average viewer, this is just foreign aid. To China, it's stadium diplomacy. The logic is sharp. Many developing countries need infrastructure, but can't afford it. China steps in with loans or grants. Chinese companies win the construction contracts. Local elites are grateful. And when it's time to vote at the UN or decide whether to recognize Taiwan, they remember who built their national stadium. These projects are often tied into the wider Belt and Road Initiative. We'll build your roads, ports, and yes, your stadiums too. On top of that, China sends coaches for youth teams, sports equipment, training programs for national squads. From women's football in Cambodia to volleyball gear in Africa to martial arts programs in Eastern Europe. It's soft power with concrete and grass. Of course, not everything is perfect. Some stadiums end up unused or poorly maintained. One in the Caribbean reportedly turned into a temporary medical clinic. But that's not the point. The point is, when your country wins a historic match in a Chinese-built stadium, under Chinese-installed floodlights, in front of Chinese-made seats, the highlight reel is also an advertisement. China helped make this possible. Chapter 7, The Medal Machine, Targeting the Right Sports. While all of this is happening, the stadiums, the football dream, the winter sports boom, China is still playing its original game. The medal game, from Atlanta 1996 onwards, Chinese sports officials developed a brutal logic. We don't have to be good at everything. We just have to be dominant at the right things. So they focused on niche Olympic sports where a relatively small number of athletes can win a lot of medals. State-directed training gives a big advantage. Its problem actually is, and other countries may not invest as heavily. Sports like table tennis, badminton, diving, shooting, weightlifting, some gymnastics disciplines. In table tennis, China has been so dominant that entire Olympic tournaments feel like internal Chinese competitions. In badminton and diving, they've often swept multiple golds at once. They did the same thing in the Paralympics. Since 2004, China has topped the medal tables at the Summer Paralympic Games. At the Beijing 2022 Winter Paralympics, they went from barely existing in winter parasports to dominating. How? Again, the whole nation system? Talent scouts look for kids with the right body type or disability category. They are brought into specialized schools. Training becomes their full-time life. Every detail is optimized for medal output. Behind closed doors, officials talk about goals like become a sports powerhouse by 2035, compete with the US in overall medal counts, It's not just national pride, it's a message. Our system works. Our model produces champions. Look at the scoreboard. But in the 21st century, there's a new kind of scoreboard being built. Not just in stadiums, but on screens. Chapter 8, Esports, Conquering the Virtual Arenas. If football is the world's biggest sport today, esports might be the biggest tomorrow. And China saw that early. Back in 2003, when most governments barely knew what esports were, China officially recognized them as a sport. By 2019, Chinese universities could offer degrees in esports management, game design, streaming, and more. Today, China is the largest esports market on Earth. Revenues in the tens of billions of dollars. Huge stadiums sold out for tournaments. Millions watching online. Chinese teams have won or contended for world titles in games like League of Legends, Dota 2, and Honor of Kings. Built fan bases that stretch from Beijing to Brazil. The state's logic is clever. Young people worldwide are spending more time watching Twitch and mobile games than traditional sports. So, if you want future influence, you don't just sponsor football teams. You control the games themselves, the platforms they're played on, and the teams and tournaments everyone watches. Chinese tech giants like Tencent own or control massive chunks of the global gaming ecosystem. Popular games, esports leagues, streaming platforms. That means a Chinese company might own the game, host the league, and broadcast the tournament. Even if the fans are in Europe or North America, it's a new kind of sports empire. Not just about stadiums and fields, but about servers and screens. Chapter 9. AI, data, and the sports lab of the future. While all of this plays out, there's another layer to China's strategy. Technology. China isn't just training athletes the old-fashioned way. It's turning sports into a science experiment. In recent years, Chinese teams at major events have used AI video systems that track every movement in real time, large sports models, AI brains trained on huge amounts of match footage and biomechanics data, wearable tech, smart suits, smart shoes, sensor-equipped bars and balls. In some competitions, cameras follow athletes automatically. The AI calculates speed, angle, fatigue, reaction time, and within minutes, coaches receive detailed tactical and technical reports. A diver finishes a jump. The machine breaks down rotation, splash size, body angle. A basketball player runs a play. The system tracks how fast they accelerated, where the defense was late, what pass was optimal. Weightlifters train with bars full of sensors. Skiers practice on VR slopes in indoor facilities when there's no snow. Chinese companies and universities are pouring money into sports tech R&D, hoping to improve their own athletes, sell these tools worldwide, and set the standards for how sports are measured in the future. If they succeed, then every country that wants elite performance might end up buying Chinese sensors, using Chinese AI software, subscribing to Chinese analysis platforms. It's like building the Hua of sports performance. And the final piece of the puzzle, owning the brands that athletes wear when they win. Chapter 10, Anta versus Adidas, the Sportswear War. For decades, when a champion lifted a trophy on TV, the logo on their chest was usually Nike, Adidas, Puma, Western brands. China wants to change that. Homegrown giants like Anta and Li Ning have exploded in size. Anta is worth tens of billions of dollars. Li Ning has gone from a local brand to a global name. They don't just make shoes for Chinese kids anymore. Dwayne Wade, one of the NBA's biggest stars, signed with Li Ning. Chinese brands now sponsor international basketball players, Olympic teams, and national squads. Anta already controls big foreign brands in Asia, like Fila's Rights. And in the mid-2020s, Anta and Li Ning even explored teaming up to buy Puma, the German sportswear giant. Imagine if that had gone through. A Chinese-led group owning a historic European brand, outfitting international teams, controlling sponsorship deals for global tournaments. Even without that, China is quietly building the world's sports factory. Towns that produce a majority of the world's ski poles, factories that churn out footballs, shirts, and shoes for everyone. For now, many of these products carry Western logos. But over time, the plan is clear. Shift from made in China to owned by China. Chapter 11, the mass sports boom at home. All of this global strategy wouldn't work if China itself wasn't turning into a sports society. So the government set another huge goal. By 2025, turn the domestic sports industry into a market worth around 5 trillion yuan, roughly $770 billion. How? Building more public gyms and courts, subsidizing sports venues so people can play cheaply or free, creating hundreds of domestic leagues and tournaments, turning marathons, city leagues, and national championships into media events. Local football leagues in Chinese provinces are now drawing tens of thousands of fans per game. Some tournaments generate billions of yuan in tourism, tickets, and merchandise. Old coal towns rebrand themselves as ski hubs. Coastal cities become triathlon and marathon capitals. The idea is a healthier population, a bigger talent pool, a culture where watching and playing sports is normal. The more people play, the more chances to find the next champion. The more people watch, the more money flows into leagues and brands, many of them Chinese. And with massive government support, China plans to host hundreds of international sports events in a single year. From Asian Games to World Cups in niche sports to huge esports tournaments. Every event is a piece of branding. Strong China. Modern China. Sportspower China. Chapter 12, the dark side of the dream. So is this all just an inspiring story of a country falling in love with sports? Not exactly, because beneath the medals, the stadiums, the ski slopes, and esports stages, there are some hard questions. First, the human cost. When children are pulled into sports schools at age 6 or 7, they often leave their families, live in dorms, train for hours every day, with little say in the matter. If they make it to the national team, they become heroes. If they get injured or fail to reach the top, their education and career prospects can be limited. Second, freedom versus control. Many of these sports programs are driven from the top down. Targets in 5-year plans, quotas for medals, political pressure to deliver results. That can create corruption, cover-ups, dangerous training methods, and as we saw in football, scandals that destroy public trust. Third, sports is propaganda. When a Chinese athlete wins gold, state media doesn't just celebrate the athlete, it celebrates the system. This proves our model is superior. When China builds a stadium abroad, it's not just generosity, it's influence, it's leverage. It's another handshake that might later turn into a vote or a contract or a pipeline deal. And finally, what happens if the plan succeeds? What does the world look like if Chinese companies own major sports brands, Chinese AI runs global sports analytics, Chinese firms host your favorite esports leagues, Chinese money builds your local stadium, Chinese athletes dominate medal tables and World Cups? Maybe it's just a new balance of power. Or maybe, once again, whoever controls the games controls the narrative. Final chapter, the Endgame. China's story in sports is not finished. Right now, the men's football team is still struggling. Winter sports are booming, but still young. Esports dominance is challenged by publishers and politics. Tech in sports is becoming a battlefield between countries. And Chinese brands are fighting Nike and Adidas for space on the world's biggest stages. But step back and you'll see something bigger. No other country on earth has tried to engineer sports like this. With 50-year plans, with billions of dollars in infrastructure abroad, with AI labs and esports degrees, with stadium diplomacy and sportswear acquisitions, with 300 million people learning winter sports, and with a political leader who openly says, we will host and win a World Cup before 2050. I'm C9. Most nations treat sports as culture. China treats it as strategy, from GOAT-level decisions that cause famines to precision-planned medal factories and esports empires. The 20th century showed what happens when politics invades every part of life. The 21st century is showing us something new. When global power moves onto the pitch, into the stadium, and into your favorite game. China's secret plan to take over world sports isn't really a secret at all. It's written in policy documents, visible in stadium blueprints, printed on jerseys, and hidden in AI code. The real question is, will the rest of the world keep seeing it as just sports, or realize it's actually a new front line of geopolitics? Because one day, when a World Cup final is played in a Chinese-built stadium, streamed on a Chinese platform, in a game analyzed by Chinese AI, between teams sponsored by Chinese brands, we might look back and say, this didn't happen overnight. This was the plan all along.